Good evening, everyone. If everyone could please take your seat. Wow, what a great crowd. Welcome. My name is Fred Lee, and I'm the Associate Director at Alumni UBC. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's UBC Dialogue, our fifth season of provocative discussions presented by our media and broadcast sponsor, the CBC, and our inaugural presenting sponsor, Scotiabank. Thank you so much for your ongoing tremendous support. We really do appreciate all of you carving out some time from your very busy schedule to join us tonight. Show of hands, because I'm very curious, who is attending their very first UBC Dialogue? Wow, welcome. It's great to see so many of you here. As well, for all of our alumni UBC colleagues, show of hands, all of you who are UBC alums. Woo! That's fantastic. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our online audience. For the very first time, we are live streaming a UBC Dialogue, so it's great to have you join us wherever you may be in our global network of 285,000 alumni. I invite everyone online to share your thoughts and questions with us via Twitter. The Twitter handle is @AlumniUBC. Hashtag is #UBC Dialogues. For all of you who are shy in this room, you can also share your comments with us via Twitter. There is free Wi-Fi. The password is Coaster. As mentioned, this is the fifth season of our provocative UBC Dialogues, which have been presented locally, nationally, and internationally. And I am absolutely thrilled to see such a wonderful response for tonight's very important discussion. We invite you and your friends to participate. Following the moderated panel discussion, there will be a question and answer period. We do invite you to raise your hands, and we will have volunteers, including myself, that will have a mic to take your questions. We do ask you to speak into the microphones, as this is live streamed for the benefit of our online audience, as well for a future podcasts. This is an extraordinary time for us at UBC. In September 2011, we kicked off the most ambitious fundraising and alumni engagement campaign in Canadian university history, called Start an Evolution. Our twin goals: one, to raise $1.5 billion for student learning, research, and community engagement initiatives in Vancouver and the Okanagan. Secondly, to involve 50,000 of our alumni in the life of the university by 2015. As you may have heard, over $1 billion have now been raised, and over 45,000 individual alumni were involved with UBC in the last academic year. Thanks to you, our alumni, donors, and friends, we are now 2/3 of the way towards both of our goals. So whatever issues are important to you, the ones that you grapple with every day, chances are UBC is already involved. If I could direct your attentions to the screen, here are some ways that you can join us. We seem to be having some technical difficulties, if you will just bear with us.
I need more graduates with How can one person make a difference? I need more graduates with these skills.
We are so close to a cure.
I wonder what they're doing now.
How am I going to manage through grad school?
It feels good to share my experience.
We need to preserve this for our children.
How do we create a more sustainable future?
I want to do something right here, right now.
I want to keep on learning. I imagine a world where everyone...
When I think about the
If
ways
I was to try and help,
there's
I'd
so
start
much more that needs to
I
be
can
done.
with UBC.
At this very moment, UBC researchers, teachers, students, alumni, and donors are changing the world around us.
Thank you. The UBC Alumni Association has just launched a new, bolder, and more energized vision, one that reflects an understanding of alumni as an integral part of their university and of their alumni network. This new vision puts UBC and its alumni at the core of the university, with deeper and broader alumni engagement being an essential component of a globally influential UBC. Your presence at tonight's event is absolutely a testament to that alumni spirit. So why UBC Dialogues? Our alumni have consistently told us they want to hear from UBC in the communities where they live and on issues that matter to them. Our alumni want to make a positive impact in their community and around the world, and our alumni want opportunities to connect with one another and with their alma mater. This evening, we will hear from alumni and community experts who are leaders in their field. So on behalf of UBC, Alumni UBC, I welcome and thank all of them for their time and talent. Before we start tonight's conversation, it is my pleasure now to welcome Dean Bly Frank, UBC's Dean of Education, to the podium to say a few words. Dr. Frank.
Thank you, Fred. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Faculty of Education and myself as Dean, welcome. Let me begin by acknowledging this evening that we are here on the shared traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I'm very pleased to be here at this important dialogue. I look forward to meeting many of you at the reception following the panel and the discussion. I'd also like to acknowledge, and as Dean, offer my sincere thanks to three of our panelists who I claim as mine. This is the way you talk when you're a dean. Faculty of Education alum Carol Todd, 84, I believe it was. Should I say that here, Carol? To two of our faculty members, Dr. Lynn Miller, who holds the Mirny-Nevison Professorship in Anxiety Prevention, and Dr. Shelley Hymel, who holds the Edith Lando Professorship in Social and Emotional Learning. Two people with national and international reputations in their field. So thank you to all three of you on behalf of the Faculty of Education. In the spirit of dialogue, I am very pleased to report that the Faculty of Education will launch the Year of Teacher Education, and you saw this on the screen, with an event on October the 9th, with some special guests speaking at the event. Last year, we thematized the year since my arrival. We've just finished the year of Indigenous education. Some of you may have been at events. Let me say that we have created a professorship in Indigenous teacher education, and there'll be a draw this evening for the book, which we're all reading as part of community engagement and involvement. So I asked you to put your name in the draw. Seating is limited for the event on the 9th, so please visit the Year of Teacher Education website to register and confirm your participation. And in the context of alumni dialogues, the Faculty of Education let me claim that we have 50,000 graduates now out of those 285,000. This is the second largest alumni constituency among all faculties at the University of British Columbia. It's our goal to stay connected with you, our alumni community, to celebrate with you, and to assist you, if you're willing, in your lifelong learning endeavors. So please come and visit us at www.edu.ubc.ca. Thank you once again to Alumni UBC for asking the Faculty of Education to partner with you in this event. And thank you on behalf of the faculty for joining us here this evening.
Thanks, Dr. Frank, and we do appreciate you and your colleagues' support of this very important discussion tonight. Regrettably, Gloria Makarenko is under the weather and unable to join us tonight. We wish her a speedy recovery, but I'm thrilled to welcome a good friend and colleague, Renee Filippone, who has very kindly agreed to step in and moderate tonight's conversation. Renee Filippone, she is the CBC News Vancouver weekend host. She has joined CBC since 2005, and in that very short time has received much acclaim. She is a BCIT and SFU grad. I won't hold that against her. But we do welcome her tonight to moderate this discussion. Please welcome Renee Filippone.
Thank you, Fred. And I'm very happy to be here in place of Gloria today. Late notice and lovely panel, and we'll introduce all of them in just a couple of minutes here. But, you know, bullying has long been considered a part of growing up, but in recent years it really feels like this is an issue and a problem that we're seeing and we're hearing a lot more about. You know, why that is, increased family dysfunction, you know, lack of school policies, social media. Maybe it's just we're talking about it more, it's media hype. But we're here today to talk about, you know, can we stop bullies? That's sort of the pointy question today, and if so, how do we go about doing that? So we have 5 experts here today to do that with us, to talk about this and address these very big questions. So to start, I'm just going to introduce all of them, and then we'll get going right away. So Carol Todd, here to my left. She received her Bachelor of Education degree from UBC. She is a teacher who works with special needs children, and now one of the world's most innovative leaders for the fight for online safety for children. She runs the Amanda Todd Legacy, named after her late daughter Amanda, who committed suicide after being a victim of sexual cyberbullying and cybercrime. Carol formed the Legacy in order to work on behalf of the movement to keep children safe wherever they are, and Carol has also formed strong strategic alliances with world leaders and organizations such as the Red Hood Project, the Social Network Association, where she is on the board of advisors. And next beside her is Brenda Morrison. She received her Bachelor of Arts degree from UBC. She is the director of the Center of Restorative Justice and an associate professor in the School of Criminology at Simon Fraser University. She is a social psychologist with field experience in outdoor education, government administration, and restorative justice. Her teaching and research interests include transformative and restorative justice, responsive regulation, school violence and safety, conflict and cooperation, shame management and social identity, and self-interest. And she is active in these areas nationally and internationally, including with the national organization PrevNet, which is promoting relationships, eliminating violence network. And beside her is Lynn Miller. She is an associate professor in the Education and Counselling Psychology and Special Education Department at UBC. She started her career as a classroom teacher and then worked as a school counselor K-12. She had several research grants examining the effects of empirically supported approaches to child anxiety in the public school system, and is currently investigating anxiety at the entry to schools in grade kindergarten and 1. She's also conducted research on different models of anxiety prevention programs in schools, including Taming Worried Dragons, Skills for Social and Academic Success, Cool Little Kids, as well as an enhanced program for Aboriginal children. And, And then Shelley Hymel is next. She is a professor at UBC's Faculty of Education and part of the Human Early Learning Partnership at UBC, with her work focusing on social and emotional learning and development in schools. She is one of the team leaders for PrevNet and also helped establish the Bully Research Network. She publishes extensively in the area of social development and peer relations, both nationally and internationally, with a major focus on school bullying, and works regularly with students experiencing social difficulties with schools and school districts that want to address the school side of learning. And finally, Sherri Mohoruk is Superintendent of Safe Schools with the BC Ministry of Education. She has responsibility for all aspects of student and school safety with a specific focus on 5 key areas. Number 1 is the Erase Bully Strategy, 2, Internal Government and National Liaison on Safety, 3, Threat Risk Assessment and Critical Incident and Trauma Response, and 4, emergency preparedness, and 5 student issues that include substance misuse and abuse, mental health issues, child abuse and reporting, domestic violence, and gang prevention. Previously, Sherri held the position as the Superintendent of Liaison and has worked in public education as a teacher, principal, director for student services, director for curriculum and instruction, and an assistant superintendent. So very qualified panelists here today, if I've gone through all of that. So if we can all just give them a warm welcome before we get started. So just a few quick things to go over. We're going to have a quick discussion here. I'll ask the panelists a couple of questions for the first bit of this, and then we're going to open the floor to questions from you. That will be followed, as Fred mentioned, and the Dean also mentioned, by a reception in the lobby. At that point, you can feel free to continue the conversation with any of the individuals here if you have specific sort of one-on-one questions for them. Also a reminder, we are recording this as this evening's dialogue. It'll be made available as an audio podcast and is live stream video at Alumni UBC website, which is alumni.ubc.ca. So I guess we'll get to the point and start with the first question is, can we stop bullying? And we'll go to Carol first. Just, that's a very specific question, and just your thoughts.
Can we stop bullying? I wish that all the bullying was gone from the world. I lost my daughter, and I have to say that I lost her in the true sense. She was exploited online. She was bullied physically by her peers. She was cyberbullied, and ultimately that caused some mental health distresses, which ultimately took her life. I think that we really, as in the schools, in our communities, we need to work on how we can better build tolerance and compassion and respect within our children, because in order for something to change, we have to change our way of thinking, and we have to change our way of thinking as a whole group and as a village, not as singular entities. Thank you.
And Brenda, your take on that one, can we stop bullies?
That is a very good question. But first of all, I'd like to just honor Carol, because she's doing everything that we all need to do. She is a testament to the courage and the passion it's going to take to address this problem. Thank you. So I think the first thing we need to do is change the culture from a culture of passive bystanders to a culture of upstanders. I'm wearing pink today because there's 2 famous boys in Nova Scotia that started the whole movement, the pink movement, and they were upstanders. So to change the culture, we have to become upstanders. And to do that, we need to reframe the problem. We often frame the problem as an institutional problem that requires an institutional response. That sets us up with limits. And it says someone else is going to save the problem. It's not our problem, it's someone else's problem. It's the institution's problem. It's all of our problem. It's a community problem. We've been putting programs in institutions for a number of decades now. We've got scads of programs, and in our big meta-analysis, what it tells us is that we can curb the problem, on average, say 20 to 30%. Some of them get up to 40%. That tells me we're missing an important part of the equation. And I think we have to think more critically about the power dynamics within our institutions and within our communities. So here's a quick example. When there's a problem in the classroom, we send the problem, and well, the power authority, that be the teacher, sends the problem and the person down, out the door, down the hall to the next power authority, the next person up in the power authority, the principal, vice principal. What happens in that is that we model in our classrooms, when things get tough, other people take care of the problem. In my field, in the field of restorative justice, we talk about that's when we start to begin a culture of 911. When things get tough, other people take care of it. We have to start taking care of it. The Dalai Lama was gathered together with a number of important people, and he was asked, what is our biggest threat to humanity? Well, other people said terrorism at the time, poverty. He said we've raised a generation of passive bystanders. That's where it starts. And it starts in our schools and in the classroom when we think of classrooms as communities.
Thank you. Lynn?
So I'm not sure I'm the person to answer that question. I'm going to defer to Shelley, Hymel, but my interest in the panel stems from looking at the broader culture of children in schools and looking at what we basically talk about mental health and their ability to cope with stressors and problems. And what's far misunderstood by the general public is this whole idea about mental health and mental illness and which children are going to fall prey to mental health concerns over time. And we've got really strong data that show that 1 in 5 children have a significant problem with a mental health situation on a daily basis. And when we talk about, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that it interferes with their ability to go to school calmly and safely, or it interferes with their ability to develop appropriate friendships, or it interferes in the functioning of the home. So that's 1 in 5. 20% of children are struggling, and their families are struggling trying to help them cope. And there just isn't a lot of recognition about this problem. So that's my role on the panel, to look at, do we know anything about the mental health situation of bullies, and do we know anything about the victims that are their targeted prey?
Can we stop bullying? I can give you a definitive yes and no. In the work that I've been doing for about 40 decades, there is hope. As Brenda mentioned, the research is showing that really powerful model programs can reduce bullying by 40%. When you put it in typical educational settings, the reduction's more like 20%. And some recent research that came out of the World Health Organization showed that across countries, there is a reduction in bullying over the last few years, but it's only about 10%. So there's hope, but I think we can do a lot better. And for me, the main thing that I think is a problem here is everybody's looking for a simple solution, a single program, one thing that we can do to make it all better. There is no single program, because what we've learned, if anything, is that kids bully for many different reasons. And there are children, for example, who have mental health problems, who do need our support, but that represents only one small part of the population. In our data, we're having well over 50% of the kids, and sometimes as many as 75% of kids, saying that they bully on occasion. Bullying is a developmental problem. It's kids learning about power, learning about social relationships. And I think we have to stop thinking of it as a discipline problem and start thinking of it as a teaching moment, helping our kids to find a better way. I also think we have to remember that bullying is not just a school problem, it's a community problem, and it's a societal problem. We advocate it in so many things that we do in our society. Our kids are raised on media where you can order people off islands. So I think we have to really think hard about how we address bullying and build a much bigger toolbox to help our children develop a better generation in the next one.
And for you, Sherri?
Thanks very much. I actually thought that I would address the panel by kind of focusing on it by what government is trying to do. I agree with Shelley that we have hope in terms of how we can go about addressing bullying. There is really no single program or one-size-fits-all solution to addressing the complexities of bullying. It's really a worldwide phenomena. I really think that the rapidly changing face of social media combined with the negative use of social media, has really heightened all of our awareness in terms of the need for perhaps a more systemic, multifaceted approach in how we address bullying and other harmful behaviors in our schools and communities. Government announced the Erase Bullying Strategy in June of 2012, and ERASE stands for Expect, Respect, and a Safe Education. And we began training in October of last year. One of the things I wanted to say is that we did receive input from our education stakeholders and other social serving ministries in terms, as well as parents and kids, about what we should put into the strategy. And the kids' voice was perhaps most powerful because they really stressed the importance of respectful relationships that existed among all members of a school community, including all of the adults in the community as well as the students. The need for clearly defined behavioral expectations that, once again, everybody in the school community adhered to, and the importance of what it looked like and felt like to be in a classroom or school that really promoted that safe and inclusive environment, that promoted that strong sense of belonging as well as feelings of safety. And actually the kids told us they really want to become more proactive. They are looking for more leadership ways to help their peer groups become helpful bystanders rather than passive bystanders. Just a couple of other things about the Erase strategy. It really links carefully into the BC's education plan, which is focused on personalizing learning. Erase really takes it that one step further in terms of personalizing services and supports for kids and their families. And I'll leave it at that, and we'll move on with our questions.
Sure, thanks. And maybe we'll just go back to you, Shelley, and I think this is an interesting question. You know, I bet there is not a single person in this room here who didn't experience some form of bullying as they grow up, and you hear a lot of people when we hear these stories say, oh, bullying's been around forever. Others say it's getting worse. What do we know about if it's actually getting worse, or we're just hearing more about it because of social media? Are we paying more attention to it? What do we know about that?
There's not a whole lot of really good data. That's why I mentioned the World Health Organization, because at least they've been doing the same kind of thing over several years. The research is showing that it's not necessarily getting worse, although there's a couple studies that are showing it's increasing, but only slowly, not extensively, and this most recent one suggests some issues of decline. But as one kid put it to me, yeah, bullying's been around for a long time, but did kids bring pipes to school and bully you with it in your day? And I said, no, actually they didn't. So there is more awareness, and I think that is increasing it, but there's no evidence that it's really skyrocketing or anything like that.
Carol, you look like you want to jump in there.
I do, and I don't, bullying has been around forever, but back in the days when we were younger, and we got pushed and shoved and maybe name called, we were able to go home and we were able to get away from it. But now with the onset of social media and technology, it's in a child's life 24/7. They go home, they walk in their door, they get on their smart devices, and the name calling and the shaming all start again. And so these kids don't get a break. Their minds don't get a break. And so then we have the victims, and we see the resiliency. Well, we need to build up resiliency because the kids don't have it. They're losing with the social media, they're losing their ability to do face-to-face communication, which is so important in how to read people's faces, how to socially interact. And when it's not there, we have a whole new problem.
Anyone else want to add to, yeah?
I just want to add that, one of our lead trainers, Teresa Campbell from Safer Schools Together, she actually talks when she works with educators and community service providers about the three things that's made cyberbullying such an issue, and that's really the fact that it's the accessibility of it, the anonymity of it, and the fact that it's there 24/7, as Carol was saying. So I think those are some key things that really make a difference in terms of parents even understanding what apps their kids are downloading. It's hard for us to keep up with the net lingo that kids are using. The fact that with every day that goes by, there's another app that kids are downloading that parents don't know about.
Just to echo that, I think Carol the comments are actually accurate. Cyberbullying has made a different problem, but I think it's also important to keep in mind that when you ask kids about the kinds of bullying that they face, physical bullying and cyberbullying, the one we worry about the most and the ones kids fear the most, are the lowest frequency. The ones that kids deal with the most are the verbal and the relational bullying, gossip, exclusion, rumor spreading. And those are really hard for adults to deal with because they're always in the gray zone. Is that teasing among friends, or is it somebody trying to humiliate someone else? So we have to kind of keep in perspective that there's definitely the dangers and the fears and the added problems of cyberbullying, but the day-to-day struggles of kids, the main thing they're doing is dealing with people hurting them verbally and relationally.
I know when we talk about stopping bullying, there's often a conversation, do you give where do you focus the attention? Is it on the people who are doing the bullying? Is it on the victims, giving them tools to better deal with it and protect themselves? I don't know. Lynn, do you want to take that one? Like, where should we be looking if we want to find solutions?
I think that's a really good question, but what we're finding out, and of course Shelley can weigh in on this as well, but the idea about inoculating, for instance, the victims, well, that's going to be a really hard tack to take, largely because the children, we know definitively that the children who are targets of bullies suffer from higher rates of anxiety and depression than all the other categories combined. So these children, especially if they're anxious, and that's by and large the largest mental health problem among school children, are very sensitive. They're sensitive to peers, they're sensitive to comments made about them. Even if there's neutral comments made, they're very often taken out of context and skewed. I don't think that making those children more resilient is probably the most effective way to go. Similarly, we know that children who do bully also have some mental health problems of their own, and the idea about being aggressive and assertive, that's often rewarded in adult company, for sure. However, in youngsters, those kids, if they're overly aggressive, then they're penalized by being rejected. So now we've got two groups of kids, the bullies themselves who don't have appropriate peer relationships and aren't learning them the proper way, and the children who are victimized who also are deprived of appropriate peer relationships. And over time, they both have fewer and fewer friends, specifically for the victims, that they have a smaller social circle. And so when those comments do come in, or those exclusionary kind of actions come in, they hurt even more.
Brenda?
It's, I think, if we just focus on one or the other, like it's always, this little triangulation, the bystander is important. We know that, empowering bystanders to be upstanders is really important to, breaking a cycle of bullying that's happening before their eyes, but also it's creating a culture of care and compassion. With PrevNet, their byline is bullying is a relationship problem that requires a relationship solution. Both bullies and victims are having a problem managing healthy relationships. And even though their trajectories might be quite different in how they're manifesting that, say victims are more likely, say, to internalize, but sometimes they switch and they become the bully, and that becomes even a more complicated problem. And a lot of bullies have very externalizing problems. They act out in ways that harm others or the school, but both of them are on a trajectory where they're having a problem managing relationships. And it looks different in the early days, but in the end, they're both susceptible to depression and suicidal ideation. They both need our help in managing relationships in healthy ways, because if we don't take care of it now in our schools, we're going to pick them up in our healthcare system and in our jails.
Carol, you wanted to?
I have to say, and I want to make sure that it's understood that when we talk about bullying and cyberbullying, that we don't make the correlation that those cause suicide, and it doesn't cause the kids to take their own lives. It's just something that happens in their life that makes their emotional strength deteriorate to a place where they can't handle things anymore, and they go into a darker place. It's quite sad, and I, as a teacher, I go into the schools and I see what happens. I'm hearing from lots of parents right now who have children who are experiencing bullying of some sort, and which leads to some self-harm injuries. Those parents are lost. I think when we talk about the victims and the children, we also have to think about the families and how it affects them. I know that when I go and speak to kids and I talk about Amanda's story, because they are so close to me, sitting this close and hearing the story face to face, I see a lot of emotion there. I know that Amanda's video went worldwide, and I get responses from all over the world, and the question is always, how did this one child touch the hearts of so many out there? And I think it's because she was, even though she suffered from her mental health, she was quite brave and resilient to a point where she was able to want to share her story, and this is her story that's brought us here and has caused the world to wake up to what can we do to make it stop.
Shelley, just want to?
I just want to expand a little bit, my point being that there's so many different kinds of bullies. Yes, totally in agreement, there's a group of kids who bully who have mental health problems, both before and after. But interestingly, a lot of the bullying that goes on is not just by kids who have those kinds of problems. In fact, when we talked to kids on the interior, and we identified who they thought were the bullies, over 50% of the kids that identified as bullies are high-status, popular kids. So the other component that we see is that there are kids who are very socially competent who are also bullying. So I think that, again, there's such a diversity in the reasons kids bully, and there has to be a diversity in our approaches to dealing with it.
Sherri?
I just want to build on what Shelley was saying, because often when we've met with kids, they've often said that they were afraid to talk to their teachers or principals because the person that was engaging in the bullying, that we often refer to as the puppet master, was orchestrating the behaviors that were making other people feel uncomfortable, were the ones that they always saw greeted positively by adults in their schools or their communities, or people saying that not him, he's a good kid. And so that was one of the reasons why we introduced an online reporting tool, because kids were telling us that they just wanted to have another way that they could safely report concerns without feeling that they weren't being taken seriously by their teachers or their schools or their parents.
So we hear about these programs such as the Erase one that's been in for a while, this online reporting, there's a discussion about this, but you still hear stories about parents with their children being bullied. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to go to. When can we say we're doing enough? Are we never going to be doing enough? What are we doing that's right now? Like, what more can we be doing?
I just want to say that we did set up a website that lists information and resources for parents. And as Shelley and Lynn and Brenda were talking about, PrevNet has a wide array of resources. So we put links to various other resources that parents can access. And I think that we're just going to have to continue to be vigilant, because the face of bullying changes each and every day, and we need to be attuned to it. We need to understand the diversity of our populations of kids in our school, making sure that we're understanding what are their issues, what are their concerns, and being able to address some of the issues that some of us feel uncomfortable talking about.
I think that that we have teachers in our schools that are still floundering in how to deal with the bully aspect. Sure. I can say that as a teacher, when I come across a situation, the first thing is I wonder what the situation is going to be, and I wonder if I'm going to be able to handle it comfortably and do it right. And so there's me, and then there's all the 48,000 other teachers in our province that think the same thing. Every situation is different, but the question is, are we as teachers trained properly to deal with them? And one of the things that I know happened to my daughter was, if something happened with her peers, the administration would sit all the kids in the same room to talk about the problem. And that, when you think of the child who's targeted, well, the big anxiety levels, right? The person with the bully behaviors has the power, and the victim often doesn't say anything. They sit there and they're quiet, and that's one of the things that I often just talk about with other parents or other educators is that the right way to go? So it's reframing our thought patterns in how we're going to deal with the problems, reteaching, and I truly believe that if we work on the compassion, respect model, and we do it at such a we start at a young age. I'm talking toddlerhood. I'm talking maybe even when a mom and dad find out that they're pregnant. We need to instill those values and hopefully build it up so that there's no such thing as, or bullying behaviors are frowned upon, and kindness and respect are what the norm is. And I often use the example of our drinking and driving laws, or our seatbelt laws. And once long ago, if you can remember that, we talked about seatbelt laws and we groaned and we said, they're going to hinder our bodies and it's going to be horrible. But now you get into a car and a young child will say, Mom, you can't start that car until you have your seatbelt on. And that's what kindness and respect should be about.
Did you want to add something there?
I think that's the way I think a lot of the people working in this field are going, that bullying is one part of a larger issue and a larger mandate for schools, and that's social and emotional development and learning. Schools have long focused on curriculum and on the academic skills, which is appropriate, but we really need to focus on social and emotional learning as well. And I'm grateful that, at least in our Faculty of Education, we've started some social emotional learning cohorts trying to give teachers the skills that I think the previous generation of teachers didn't have to try to deal with these kinds of problems. And in fact, just today I spoke to all the new secondary teachers about how they could actually start addressing bullying through a lens of social emotional development, focusing on compassion, focusing on the positive side. Bullying is just a symptom of a larger issue.
And Brenda, you wanted to add something to this as well?
I was just going to pick up on sort of the parent piece, because I think parents are a really important part of the problem. I've seen in the course of my work that parents can make things worse and parents can make things better. What happens when one little girl goes home and she tells her story, and the other little girl goes home and tells her story, and all of a sudden, and then there's some bullying or some other harmful behavior, communities fracture over there, and one group of parents sort of come together around one, and another group of parents come around another, and the community fractures. And parents need support too. Parents need places that they can go and feel supported in their own communities, in the school communities. And they need support, they need community care, they need places where they can talk, because they can make things worse, and then they can make things better, and they can put demands on institutions that the institution can't respond to because of privacy laws. They need to be a really important part of the solution.
And
I just wanted to dovetail on with what Shelley was saying about the importance of social emotional learning. As we're going through the process of revamping education and being transformational in BC, we have new cross-curricular competencies that really are designed to help students develop their thinking, their personal and social, as well as their communication skills and abilities. And we're hoping that through the revamping of our focus on curriculum and assessment in education, that we see those cross-curricular competencies infused into every aspect of school life, whether it's in the classroom, in the hallways, or out in the playground, or in the community.
Maybe before we take some of the questions here, we can we've been talking about how big this problem is, and when we talk about how big it is and how societal it is, it almost feels overwhelming to try to address. Are there specific, tangible things we could be doing right now to make a significant difference, to try to change what we're seeing?
We need to build it into our community, build it into our families, have open discussions, have it so that kids and youth aren't afraid to go to a trusted adult to share with them, even though they don't want to talk about it. We have to make sure that we see the signs of if it's happening to a child, and be cognizant of it as parents and adults. We need to know what's going on in their lives, in their social media, and unfortunately, we try and make it a no-secret world, but kids keep things from us. But we have to be cognizant of what's around so that we can help them. And the last thing is probably that we have to make sure that we have the trust with our children so that they will share things with us, whether they're good or whether they're bad, and not judge.
Like I said, no quick fixes for any of this, but is there anything that, solutions, tangible things that we could?
I think we have to do what Carol's doing. We need to be ready, willing, and able to have courageous conversations. We need to model courage and compassion for our children. we all are managing relations all the time. All the time, we're constantly managing relationships, and it gets tough. We have to be willing and able to have difficult conversations, and we have to create the safe spaces to do that in our schools. And that's what I mean by putting communities back in the institution, is having the courage to tackle the difficult issue and model it for our children.
Any thoughts from you on that one?
I would mandate SEL training, social emotional training, for every single teacher in the province. We're lucky that we have mandated social emotional learning, but teachers are burning out, and they're saying exactly what you're saying, Carol. I really don't know how, I know it's a huge problem, but I don't know how to manage it in my classroom. I don't know how to manage it in the hallways. I don't know how to manage it on the playground or in the lunchroom. And we do. We know how to manage it. We can teach you how to manage it, but it has to be mandated. They can't take it as an option. They must be trained in it and know what's effective, what really works, or what we think probably works, and be a participant in the research aspect of it. So that's where I think every single tax dollar should go. And especially
Sherri?
pay attention to kindergarten.
I'm not in favor of textbooks, but I'm going to go ahead of, since you were teasing me. I think that what we're really trying to do in British Columbia, and I'm really proud of our province, is because we really have tried to really strengthen those relationships that exist in the school community and with our community service providers. I think if everybody sees it, and I think Carol mentioned it, that it takes more than a village, we are all in it together. And so I think that having those courageous conversations and making sure that social emotional learning is front and center in everything that we do. We know that kids have told us, I was sharing with Shelley earlier, that we did a bunch of focus groups around the province, and not one student could tell us about one violence prevention or anti-bullying program that they had participated in, but they could tell us about the teacher that made them feel welcome in their classroom, that wanted to know them as an individual, and that was there to support them. So if I had a dream, it would be that every single child in British Columbia had one mature adult that they could go to talk about issues of concern.
Sure, and then a final word, and then we'll hit the questions here.
Okay, and I just want to echo that. We have some amazing data that with having that adult there makes a huge difference, especially to vulnerable populations. I can't do much more than add one thing to what my colleagues have said. I think the only other thing that I would hope for is that we all start taking responsibility for this. Yes, begin the conversation. Yes, get more training. All those things are important. But we got to quit pointing fingers that's whose responsibility it is. It's everybody's responsibility. So when you see that kid harassing another kid, at best, give them the look of disappointment, the look of disapproval, so that there's a constant message that this behavior is not okay.
Thank you so far. Now it's we're going to put you guys in the hot seat, hopefully. We got some questions from the audience. So please put up your hand, and we have two folks here with microphones who will come up to you. Make sure you speak directly into the microphone so your question is clear for our online viewers and those watching the live webcast. They can feel free to tweet us. The Twitter handle is @AlumniUBC. The hashtag is UBC Dialogues. And if you can please keep your questions fairly straightforward and direct them to one person on the panel to answer, then we'll try to move through as many as we possibly can. So we'll start over there with Fred.
Two quick questions. The first one is for the definition of bullying. Who defines bullying? Does every teacher define it for him or herself? Every school in BC define it? And the next question is anyone doing research or looking into the relationship between the bullying child and what is going on at home? For after all, if the child is going to school and is told not to bully and then goes home and one or both parents use that kind of behavior and feed into it, where is that child going to learn? That is very confusing. So those are the two questions.
Who wants to take the definition? Do you want to?
Definition, at least in the research world, and I think in the education world, most of us follow pioneering research by Dan Olveus, who started researching this about 40 years ago. And essentially, bullying is distinguished from aggression by three characteristics. It's intentional, it's repeated over time, and there's a power imbalance. The problem with that definition, it's lovely conceptually, psychologists love it, but kids don't always incorporate that. To them, it's mean behavior. Anybody that was mean to me was bullying me. So we have this conceptual definition that makes sense. It distinguishes it as a unique form of aggression, but it's not always maintained in either the research or in people's minds.
And who would like to take, do we know, is there research being done when it comes to the children and then the difference in their home? The second part of your question?
There's lots of research that looks at am I on? It looks at the relationship between what happens at home and what happens at school. And it's complex, it's not simple. Sometimes kids just model if there's power imbalances at home, they model those same power imbalances at school, so they come to school with bullying behavior ingrained. But the other side is true too. So kids that are, say, oppressed at home and have no voice at home, they find their voice at school.
And so that's why it's really important that when that child comes to school, that the staff in that school recognizes what's going on at home and gives the child the right feedback, the right words. And you know what? I know that we're not supposed to hug children in school because it's wrong, but those hugs and those physical touches mean so much when you're passing by a child and you say, "How was your day?" Or, "I love the sweater you're wearing today." And it's those things that make the difference, and it's those things that the kids remember.
I think one more thing to remember about the family is that it's often overlooked, it's siblings. A lot of bullying happens between siblings. I come from a family of 10, I can tell you. And I think that it's real important to realize that parents sometimes don't realize how much is going on with siblings, and the research is just beginning to catch up and learn about that as well as parenting as a role model.
Great, we'll go to another question over here.
Hi, is it on? Hello? I run an empowerment program for girls ages 8 to 12, and a lot of the girls that we talk to have this generalization of bullying. So I'm interested in the definition, but more so on how that is affecting the youth. So what is the effects of this generalization, or talking so much about it? Is it having an adverse effect?
Just talking about how we define the bullying?
Sorry, how we define bullying, but as it's becoming a generalized word. So not just saying bullying is this, but it's also picking on other people, and being mean is now bullying for a lot of kids.
Right, so it encompasses everything that's negative sort of behavior.
I'll just start, and maybe somebody else can happily jump in. That's been one of the issues. It's trying to help everyone, whether you are a young person or you're a parent or you're an educator, sort of understand the differences between what's conflict, which is a normal part of what we experience every day, what's mean behavior, and also distinguishing between the different types of behavior. Shelley did a really good job about talking about, the fact that a lot of bullying that occurs is relational, but there's also physical bullying, cyberbullying, and sometimes what some kids are dismissing as cyberbullying really goes well beyond that. It's actually physical assault. It's what we sometimes talk about is social assassination of a young person, in terms of their whole sense of who they are as a person is destroyed through the comments online. And that happens, unfortunately, with very young children who somebody mentions a comment that they're fat, and then within 20 minutes it's on Instagram through the school. And so that child's level of self-esteem deteriorates. So I think we need to help people understand those various differences.
That's real good. Fred?
Next question. I was asked to remind everyone the Wi-Fi password is Coaster.
Thank you. I would like to thank you, first of all. I'm really learning a lot from this. I'm a secondary teacher, and unfortunately, coincidentally, a program I'm teaching, we just lost a student from it. She had to leave because of bullying. One thing that I found confusing, and I'm not sure who to aim this question to, so please feel free to answer, is she disclosed that she was being bullied, and then an incident happened that the perpetrator had done something else. Now, no teacher had actually seen the bullying happen, so I think what happened is the administration unfortunately felt it was a he said, she said kind of thing. So if as teachers, if a student discloses something of another type of abuse, we have to report it. We have to report it. So I'm confused if we then take these accusations or allegations forward, and it's been going on for quite some time, how is that different from any other type of abuse that they're receiving? I'm a little confused by that. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to start by saying that that's one of the things, I guess, that I was hoping through the erase strategy is that we would have teachers, much as yourself, be alert to those worrisome signs of behavior or more serious types of behaviors that you see, whether they're externalizing behaviors or internalizing behaviors that kids are feeling, and making sure that our principals and vice principals in the school and counselors are attuned to that and also are aware of those concerns and are really trying to understand what is going on with that young person. And if they don't feel that they have the answer, then to seek out. We have tons of wonderful community service providers that would be there to provide that expert advice. So I guess that's our dream, is that we would sort of really be attuned and be responding and not underreacting to those situations.
Sure, and Carol wants to add something here.
I have to say it's a dream because our funding is cut on youth mental health, and I've heard of many stories from families in my community and beyond in BC when their child is distressed and they've noticed that their child is distressed and they go and reach out to the community for mental health supports. The wait might be 6 months or a year, and that child is suffering right then and needs help right now. And so that's a big problem also. Also with when you see a child struggling in a school with some distresses from bullying behaviors, and there might be some self-harm, usually that child is telling somebody else amongst their peers. Those peers need to be able to be strong enough to tell an adult. And some of those kids won't tell, the friends won't tell because they don't want to lose the friendship, because 9 out of 10, that boy or girl that says, I'm really hurting, don't tell anybody. I won't be your friend anymore. And they won't. And I have told kids, it doesn't matter if you tell. If you are the friend of a friend, tell. Because if your friend does something, you are going to regret that decision for the rest of your life. So we need to share. It's like the upstander. We need to encourage our kids to share information about their friends if their friends are in pain, because that's ultimately what's going to help save them and get them care.
Just building on that, because our kids are really looking to us for answers, because they don't want to tattle on their friends or tell on their friends. And so what I often say is, are you telling me to get someone into trouble or out of trouble? If you're telling to them out of trouble to themselves or another, if you're telling me for that reason, then you're not telling on them. You're not telling me to get them into trouble. You're telling me to get them out of trouble for themselves and others. So it's different, and we need to tease that apart for young people.
We'll go to another question so we can get as many in as we can here.
I have 2 questions. One was very similar to the one that we had at the beginning. I was wondering, is this bullying both a symptom and a precursor to domestic violence? And have we done enough research to really take a look at this? The second one is, as a retired teacher counselor and one that volunteers now in a transition house for abused women and children, I have come across so many helping professionals that do not understand the dynamics of domestic abuse. What is the university doing to make sure that people are coming out of their professional programs with knowledge so that they can be both empathetic, compassionate, and take the right approach for these children and women after they've been abused?
Thanks. That's an interesting one. Do we have, research do we have?
There is some evidence showing that kids who bully do go on to things like dating violence, okay, and that's some really strong studies. There's also some retrospective studies, so you talk about abusers reliving their childhood experiences. That shows that there's another link there to both elder abuse, child abuse, spousal abuse. What we think is happening, this is something that the PrevNet researchers have been working on, is that kids who learn about bullying, they learn about abuse of power early on, and they take it into their other relationships. It's not a foregone conclusion. Not every kid who bullies ends up, being an abuser, but it certainly is a slippery slope that they may continue, because quite frankly, the problem is bullying is power and it works. And some people love that power, and they will use it in any relationship they can. As for the, what's UBC doing? Well, let's see. Lynn, you can talk from counseling.
I can talk about that as a member in the counseling psychology area. So we have about 200 currently enrolled graduates, and they get a lot of training actually in understanding about power imbalance between couples and in families, rules of reporting, the law, family law, why you wouldn't counsel couples together who are in a domestically abusive relationship. So they probably get 2 years dispersed throughout their coursework of being able to identify couples that are having problems and then what to do about that. Several master's theses and dissertations have also talked about abusive men, specifically focusing on abusive men. I don't know, I know that mothers also are as likely to harm their children as our fathers, but for some reason in our area, it's for the last 15 years is abusive men. So,
Fred, you have a question?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the panel. I'm really interested in restorative justice, and it's really a very important strategy for conflict resolution. But I have also learned that not all cases can be subject to restorative justice, such as conflict resolution. For example, the case of spousal abuse, where there's such a power differential that it is not considered an effective strategy. However, what we've learned from that is that perhaps the person with the violence issue can transform and receive education, et cetera, at the same time that there's empowerment education for the victim. So I guess my question is, while it's important to have dialogue and talking together, and I think Ms. Todd Carroll spoke about this, and gathering students to talk to each other may not be as effective. So I'm wondering, what are some effective strategies that actually address the power differential
Brenda,
in whatever age group, as well as the power differentials in the classroom or in families, especially when you talk about reduction of bullying? What are some effective strategies that address the power differentials and maneuver around it and bring forth the empowerment education and the addressing of one's limitations?
Do you want to? I know you do lots of work in restorative justice, so.
That's a great question, and it's common. I mean, most people think of restorative justice as a face-to-face dialogue, and that's true. But there's a lot of work that goes on before you have that very difficult conversation, particularly when there's a power differential. The main premise under the practice of restorative justice is that we all need communities of care, and we all need to be supported and accountable for our behaviors. So typically if there's a power imbalance and we take that, we don't necessarily bring the people together. We develop a community of care around, say, the person called the victim, and we develop a community of care around the person that's causing the harm. And sometimes that starts to bring out other issues, and that eventually those people can come together to have a difficult conversation, but not always. Sometimes we bring in surrogate people. So for example, there was a cyberbullying incident that happened in the interior of British Columbia. And it was a very serious incident. And throughout British Columbia, we're very lucky, we have about 60 different community-based restorative justice groups. So up in the interior of British Columbia, there happened to be one in that community. So this was a serious incident. There was a young girl being cyberbullied, and the incident went to the police. The police our criminal code includes a lot of restorative justice principles and practices in the amendments that were made in the mid-1990s. And so the police have discretionary powers to divert cases to these community-based groups. So this case was diverted to a community-based group. The restorative justice practitioners started talking to everyone. They found out there was a lot of misunderstanding. The young person that was allegedly doing the bullying had no idea that he was causing so much harm. The young girl that was being bullied was feeling very vulnerable, so she didn't want to participate in the face-to-face conversation. So her parents were there on her behalf. And they had a very difficult conversation between those two sets of parents. Some of the kids were involved, and they cleared up lots of misunderstanding. And those kids voluntarily made things better for the young girl back at school. So it doesn't have to be the face-to-face, and a good restorative justice practitioner is very sensitive to power imbalances. It would never bring people together if it was going to cause more harm than good.
I think we have some tweets. Is that where you're going, or you have a question? Oh, I saw you down at the computer, so I assume that's why you were down there. Does Fred want to go?
Let me get this one.
Oh, okay, we're going to go up here at the front first. Go ahead.
Hello. My name's Ashley. I work at the Sexual Assault Support Center at UBC. And my question is, when we're talking about how we can stop bullying, looking at why people are being bullied and why bullying is happening. And I think we've talked about a lot here today, but nothing's been mentioned about the power imbalances within society in terms of intersectionalities of oppression, and I've not had any mention of gender, of sexuality, of race. And I'm just wondering, in terms of ways in which we can tackle this, and especially as somebody working at the university and with especially recent events that have been happening at the university, how on a ground level we can get people the education about those kind of issues and how we can address bullying in that way. I know that at our center we've had experiences of cyberbullying and even something called viral rape, which is also kind of something that I think is important to bring to the table. So this question isn't really directed at anyone specifically, but I'd just like to know your thoughts.
I think it all starts with discussions, face-to-face groups, talking about people who have experienced it. I find that when you are listening to someone who has an experience, a real life experience, it certainly makes a connection more deeper when you're hearing the story. And so when we as teachers talk to our classes, all the kids are hearing our teacher talk, right? And so I think that when you put in a school system, when we're talking about bullies or we're talking about sexuality, when you have student leaders out there talking to the kids the same age, the same group, not necessarily in the same school, but someone from a neighboring school, I think it means more. So that's one strategy that we can implement to make the change, to make the shift.
And she mentioned something, we haven't really talked about gender, race, sexuality, things that often sort of are reasons that people do bully. What should we be talking about when we look at those specifics?
The overlap is obvious. I mean, people bully is sort of a catch term. At least my experience is that kids bully where they think you're vulnerable. If that's your sexual identity, we'll go there. If that's your race, we'll go there. If that's your gender, we'll go there. And so those things, it's very difficult to separate those. I don't even think we should separate them. Somebody said we should stop talking about bullying, discrimination, harassment. We should just talk about interpersonal violence, and it's all under the same umbrella, which is why I think that several of us have echoed the idea that this is the negative side effect of not having kids who are raised on compassion and acceptance and basically given a lot of more exposure to social and emotional learning and developing those competencies. So I think it's not that we're ignoring it, it's part of the same big picture.
But I think we also need to be confident, develop that confidence in being able to have those conversations in safe spaces in ways that make those people that are feeling vulnerable feel that they're okay to talk about it. I think the two big issues that we try to highlight for our educators in the school system is around homophobia and systemic racism. They're two huge issues in our province. And I think sometimes we're afraid to ask questions, and I think sometimes, I think a very wise First Nations leader once said, if people would just ask us questions, it's the starting point of a conversation that lets us talk about things that we really need to talk about.
That's the same with mental health. We need to talk about it more and not keep it a secret.
Fred?
Hi, my name is Julia Saunders, and I'm a sexual health educator, curriculum specialist, and I did my master's at UBC developing a curriculum for teachers to have sensitive conversations in everyday classrooms. This was 7 years ago, and I located it in the social and emotional education for teacher ed students. So my question today is, after 7 years, I'm very happy to hear that the focus is going to be on the social emotional education. And I'm assuming that's going to be in teacher ed. Somebody talked about a cohort in teacher ed, so I'm happy to hear that. And my question today is, how are the teachers going to be prepared? And where in this new BC rewrite of the curriculum, where is the social and emotional education going to be located?
It really ties in with those cross-curricular competencies that I talked about. Actually, the design of those competencies involved a lot of the researchers such as Shelley, and other leaders in the area of social emotional learning in terms of the importance of having it infused into the whatever we're doing in the school curriculum. So as I mentioned before, there are those strong emphasis on having children develop their thinking skills, their personal and social skills, which really embeds that social emotional learning. We know if children do not feel safe, if they do not feel that they have a sense of belonging, chances are they're not going to be engaged, and we know that they're not going to be able to learn to the capacity that they're capable of.
Are we anywhere near, when we talk about, and it was something you brought up, that training for teachers, we talk about the fact that we have a program in place that's been put in place. Obviously, we all know our school system is, it's not running free with money right now. But where is that as a priority when it comes to giving those teachers, helping teachers like Carol who have that frustration, not understanding how to totally deal with these situations? Is that somewhere in the priority list? Are we going to get there?
I think I want to clarify about our training, because it's really not a one-size-fits-all program. It really is designed to help schools look at their school community, look at their kids, be able to understand some of the things that they do need to be focusing on. So it's when it's strengthening those relationships in the school. One of the things that we know is school community connectedness is the most powerful tool that we have in our toolbox. How do we create those cultures of compassion and acceptance in our school? Those go a long way. So I think through the training, that's articulated at every level. School community connectedness is foundational in all aspects of the training that we're doing.
Specifically, do you think that maybe in the relationship education, which is typically located in the sexual health education curriculum, what is going to be happening with that to address what we're talking about today?
Well, relationship, we have already curriculum in place that really promotes healthy relationships in schools and communities, and so it will be there. What we're trying to do with the BC Ed plan is actually reduce the number of discrete learning outcomes so that we can focus on some of the bigger understandings that are tied into those cross-curricular competencies.
All right, we have a final question here up at the front. I think it's
from
online.
Twitter.
Twitter, there we go.
Okay, so what role can school counselors play in addressing this issue? Lynn.
School counselors can be front and center and leading this, actually, because school counselors are responsible for the training of teachers in their schools. That's one of their mandate. They're also responsible for doing parent education. They're also responsible for making themselves visible in classrooms and hallways, on playgrounds, in the lunchroom, so that despite having huge caseloads of, well, we're recommending 250 to 1, 250 students to 1 school counselor, it's more like 1250 to 1. However, the idea is that they have the training and they have the understanding about the dynamics, and really they should be the leaders in their schools. Whether or not they have the freedom from the principal is another issue, but school counselors should really be front and center leading at most of these initiatives, if not the leader in their school.
All right, and we have run out of time at this point, so we're just going to go to one sort of final question. We've talked about a lot of different topics here, different solutions, reasonings behind, but is there sort of, from each of you, one sort of key thing that you hope everyone who's been a part of this dialogue today could take away?
That when you go home tonight or you go tomorrow to your workplace or to your school, that you share with someone, share with 5 people what you learned here tonight. And remember, this is my Amanda Todd legacy thing, that everyone out there is a snowflake, and everyone's fragile, and everyone is unique, and everyone deserves to have a voice, no matter what color you are, what you look like, what color your hair is, what your nationality is, what your sexual orientation is. You are a snowflake.
Thank you, Carol. Brenda?
Well, I think we're social animals. We think about, when we think about restorative or bullying as a relationship problem that requires a relationship solution. But we usually default to an interpersonal relationship. I want you to widen your web and think of it as in sort of at an intergroup level, at a community level. We all need a community of care. We need community cares around our parents, around our students, around our teachers. Community of cares is what's going to shift this dynamic so we all feel empowered to stand up and address this social problem.
Before I get to Lynn, I was going to point out there's also a bunch of websites we put up there with all the various resources, different places you can go to get more information about the different topics we've covered today, and far more than that, obviously. So if you want to write those down, they are all up there for you. So, Lynn?
I think the only thing I would think about would be to really lobby your teachers and school principals to say that the education of our teachers, specifically in social emotional learning, is paramount. Actually, it exceeds the importance of math literacy, reading literacy, anything else. It does, because we just know it maps on and has higher predictive value than any of the other academic core things that they're being trained in.
Excellent points so far. Totally agree. We need a community of care. But I guess if I was going to leave you with one thought, it comes from the resilience literature. These are kids who are having a rough time, and yet they make it. They make it, and they have one thing in common, or they have 2 things in common. One is that they have somewhere where they can feel confidence or competence in their own abilities in some area. But the more important one is resilient kids have one adult somewhere who gives a damn, who supports them, who is there for them, and who they can go to. So you can be that adult for somebody.
Shelley actually stole my final comment because I guess that would be that every child in BC had one positive, healthy relationship with an adult that was there for them 24/7. And that also that each and every one of you take away the sense that we all have a role to play. It's our collective responsibility to help children keep safe in our schools and our communities, and that we understand that we can all do something different to make it better.
Thank you. And all those websites will be listed on the Alumni UBC website, along with the live stream of this and an audio podcast as well, if you want to go back over and listen to any of the points we talked about. And I just want to thank you all for coming, those of you in the room and those who've joined online to be a part of this discussion. And as we've all mentioned, to take what you've learned here and keep that discussion going is the most important thing that anyone, I think, can take away from this. So I'll just pass it back over to Fredley.
Thanks, Renee. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Renee and this incredible panel a round of applause. It is absolutely no coincidence that we decided to choose this topic at the beginning of a school year, and we are absolutely thrilled to have had this esteemed panel carve out some time to join us in this conversation. This is absolutely one of those conversations that will go on for days, weeks, months to come. And as mentioned, this evening's dialogue will be made available as a podcast and a live stream video on UBC's alumni website, www.alumni.ubc.ca. So please feel free to share the conversation with fellow alumni, colleagues, and friends. I also encourage you to continue to stay connected with your alma mater. Some very easy ways are attending an event like this, reading Trek magazine, or going online to learn the many alumni services and activities that are happening at UBC. Some of the upcoming events include our AGM on September 26th, our Young Alumni event at Park Royal Mall, and as well our next UBC Dialogue on Transportation, November 18th. As well to my left, we've also listed some upcoming activities within the Faculty of Education. Show of hands, those who are familiar with our alumni card. Okay, great. Well, if you have not signed up for your free A card, I invite you to see Mike Duncan, who can share with you all the benefits of having an A card. It gives you access to discounts from many of our partners, including the Vancouver Whitecaps, the BC Lions, Avis Car Rentals, as well as a host of UBC services. So I encourage you to get yours today. Now, I'd like to announce the winners of our business card draw. You'll all be going home with some fantastic alumni UBC wine. Congratulations to Misha Dewar-McClellan, Lena Mirakina, and Ashley Wiles. Please see our volunteers at the reception desk to pick up your alumni wine. In my notes here, it says, "The crowd goes wild." Woo! So congratulations. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you to our online audience. Thank you to our sponsors, CBC, as well as our presenting sponsor, Scotiabank. I do now invite everyone to join us for the reception where this incredible panel has agreed to take your questions and comments. And thank you again for joining us tonight.